My name is Ali, I'm a doctor and YouTuber.
I'm Taimur, I'm a data scientist and writer.
And you're listening to Not Overthinking,
the weekly podcast where we think about happiness, creativity, and the human condition.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Not Overthinking. Taimur, how are you doing today?
I was doing great until about half an hour ago. We tried to start recording this podcast, and we've been messing around with trying to record it remotely using some new software, which didn't end up working. So now we're using the old method of recording it separately.
Yeah, it's a bit insane that this still has to be done in 2020. Because to record a podcast remotely, we are on Zoom US with microphones plugged into separate systems, recording on separate SD cards. And then we have to go through the bother of recording the Zoom call, synchronizing all the microphones in post, and then doing all sorts of stuff to it. Like, there must be something that solves this problem.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know how this is still an issue. People need to stop thinking about driverless cars, AI, and just
vaccination, coronavirus.
Yeah, just forget about all that. The truth is that podcast bros don't have the...
Especially with remote recording, it just doesn't work. Anyway, how are you actually doing?
I'm actually doing all right. I'm doing all right, actually.
There we go. That's better.
I had a Zoom breakfast with some friends this morning. That was my first sanctioned Zoom social event.
Nice. Excellent.
So yeah, there were four of us. We had breakfast together and chatted. We usually go to a cafe in West Hampstead called the Wet Fish Cafe. And we found some pictures of it on Google Images and set that as our Zoom virtual background. So we could pretend we were still at the Wet Fish Cafe.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it's funny.
I've got a quiz night with some friends, a Zoom quiz night tonight.
Oh, nice. Which friends is this? Actually, this is we shouldn't just chit chat. Yeah. No one cares.
No one actually cares.
Yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is we should move on to the sponsor of this episode, which is, you guessed it,
Skillshare.
Yeah. Taimur, what is Skillshare?
Skillshare is the best way to learn anything online. It's like Netflix for online classes.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you guys should all go to skillshare.com/notoverthinking because firstly, it helps support the podcast. But secondly, you get a 2-month free trial of premium. And guess what? I've actually got 2 of my own classes on Skillshare. One of them is a class on how to edit videos using Final Cut, which is a bit niche. Fair enough. If you want to be a YouTuber and become rich and famous, then sure, then that's awesome. But 10 days ago, I released a brand new class called How to Study for Exams, an evidence-based masterclass. And it's got 36 videos and spans 4.5 hours of content. And the reviews from that are very positive. People are saying this is the single best use of my time that I've ever used in my whole life, because in this class, I literally take you step by step, all the evidence-based study techniques. So if you've ever felt that, my grades are a bit crap and I'm feeling like I'm having to do too much work to study to do well in my exams, then maybe this class will be for you, and hopefully you'll find some tips along there. And we split it up into step 1, understanding, step 2, remembering, and step 3, focusing. And within these 36 videos, we talk about all of these topics. So if you want to check that out along with a load of other classes over the next 2 months for free, you should go to skillshare.com/notoverthinking. And then that also really helps our podcast out, because then Skillshare likes us and then we'll sponsor more episodes. So then maybe we can invest in a proper remote recording setup. How was that as the plug?
That was fantastic. That could not have been better.
Thank you.
No, the class sounds good. What are we talking about this week?
All right, mate. This week it's your favorite topic. We are talking about productivity.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah, I bet you do. It's been a while since we've done a good classic podcast about productivity. And basically, I want to use you as a sounding board, as one often does in these podcasts. And I want to talk you through various principles, strategies, and tools for improving productivity. And basically, this is going to be the main thesis for my upcoming Skillshare class, which I'm filming either this evening or sometime during the week, about how to be more productive. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, it sounds all right. But before we do that, I'd like to just discuss the topic in general and how you're not bored of beating this drum. Okay, actually, I have a question for you. If, for example, if creating content was completely out of the question and you weren't allowed to create, if you weren't into the YouTube stuff or whatever, are you actually just into productivity because it's good content that people are interested in? If content didn't exist and you were just, and you spent your time thinking about stuff that you were purely intrinsically interested in, would you actually be still reading productivity books and thinking about this stuff? I find it completely baffling that you're so into it.
Okay, I think I would, because I probably wouldn't use the word productivity, but I am I am genuinely interested in sort of peak performance, to use that that buzzword.
Okay.
And I think partly I came across this stuff when I was studying psychology in third year, partly kind of prior to that, which got me interested in it. Like, why is it that some people are more motivated than others? Why is it that people are more consistent than others? Like, what are these factors that lead to individual differences in these sorts of, quote, soft skills, which actually contributes a massive amount to how, quote, successful people are. And we can go into a long conversation about what success actually means, but I think it's one of the things that's so universally applicable. Like, everyone thinks they struggle with procrastination. Everyone thinks they lack motivation to do various things. I struggle to go to the gym. I struggle to eat healthily. This is like a fundamental part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And for you to hate on it just being like, oh, productivity bros is, I think, unfair.
Yeah, no, I'm not hating on it. I was curious about it. Yeah, I think that those motivations make sense. It's obviously a very high measure thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also the fact that I can create content around it means I'm far more intrinsically motivated to read and research about it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so let's
but it's sort of like any kind of writer, If someone wasn't writing a book about something, would they really spend all that time researching it? They probably would spend some time researching it, but not kind of 100x the time they have to do to write a book about it. So
yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
Anyway, basically, right. The question is, I think the first question to start with is, what is productivity? So what is productivity to you? Because I've got a definition and I want to run it by you. Because I've added a few things to this definition over time that literally blew my mind.
Yeah, I'd say that what the definition should have a couple of ingredients. The first is some element of getting things done. But then I think another important ingredient is getting the right things done. And that the right thing should probably be relative to what you personally care about. So someone if someone doesn't is very happy just tending to their garden all day, and that's kind of what they do, they're being they're being productive.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
I think it's basically being productive is the ability to get the things done that you care about getting done, I guess, in the time frame that you care about getting them done in.
Oh, mate, you're playing right into my hands.
Oh no.
No, but in a good way.
Oh, I see.
Because that's exactly kind of the thesis that I'm kind of building up at the start when we're thinking about what is productivity. It's about, I'm saying that productivity's kind of started being a thing that people optimized for in the whole industrial revolution type era, where it's literally measuring the productivity of factory workers and factories. How productive are they? Yeah. What is their output? And it's usually output divided by time, or output per worker. But these days, in the modern day, productivity is the amount of output you can churn out per unit time. But then, I completely agree. There has to be some element of, doing the right things. And so the equation that I'm kind of proposing for productivity is productivity equals useful output over time. Would you agree so far?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
And so kind of those are the three sort of domains that I've split the class up into. It's kind of knowing what the right things to do are, actually doing those right things, and then doing those right things in an efficient fashion.
Okay, yeah.
So that's fine. That's fairly simple definition.
I like it.
So that's sort of the three-part structure. But then the other day when I was thinking about this, I realized there's a fourth element.
No.
Yeah. And genuinely, when I realized this fourth element, it legit blew my mind.
All right.
And then I messaged it to Angus, one of my team members, on Slack, and he sort of sent the mind blown emoji in a non-ironic way. But so we've said that productivity equals useful output over time. But actually, I think there is a constant that needs to be multiplied by. And that constant is F. And F stands for the fun factor.
Ah.
Yeah. And I realized that the whole, if I really boil it down to it, the reason that people think, the reason that I'm so, quote, productive and that I do lots of things is because all of them are fun. And if you can kind of increase that fun constant in everything you do, it just amplifies your productivity hugely, because suddenly motivation, consistency, discipline, willpower, all of these things are no longer an issue because it's fun. You find it enjoyable. I quite enjoy recording this podcast. It's not a real drag most of the time, and I hope you'd feel the same way.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah, let's go with that. So that's the productivity equation. Productivity equals useful output over time multiplied by fun factor.
Yeah, I like the fun factor thing. I think that's really important. I think
okay.
Good old Paul Graham has an essay where he advocates for this as well.
Oh, damn. I thought it was original.
I think the equation's quite novel.
Cool. Yeah. Anyway, so then now I'm sort of on this equation, I'm superimposing an analogy that you've come up with.
Oh.
So yeah, some time ago, and potentially we might have discussed this in a podcast ages ago. You talked about the pilot and the plane. Can you talk us through the pilot and the plane?
Yeah, it's like a metaphor for how you might want to operate your own life, where during different parts of your day, you want to play different roles. You know, and there's two principal roles. There is the role of the pilot, who broadly sets the direction of the plane, and then there's the role of the plane, which just flies in that direction. And maybe there's some course correcting along the way. And so the framework kind of is that you should find the moments in the day when you have clarity about things that you care about. So that might be in the morning before work, before like your mind becomes muddled by all these random inputs that you're taking in. It might be before you log onto the internet in the morning. It might be at night before bed. Find the few minutes of clarity that you may have during the day and play the role of the pilot. Figure out what you care about, what your priorities are, how you want to spend your day, and probably some more long-term thinking as well. And then the rest of the day, don't think about what you're doing, or don't worry about making any decisions around how you spend your time. You've already made those decisions when you were the pilot, and now the rest of the day you're just the plane and you're just executing on those things. That's kind of the framework.
Yeah, and so kind of tying that into our productivity equation, the pilot aspect of it is the useful bit, i.e., kind of doing the right things. That's what the pilot is setting. The plane aspect of it is the output bit. It's actually doing the things. And I think there is a third component of this equation, of this kind of metaphor, and that is the engineer. And it's the engineer's job to optimize the whole system so that the plane runs faster, and so that the pilot is, and so that like the whole system is more organized and efficient.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a nice little addition.
Yes. So pilot, plane, and engineer. And what I was thinking is that really, I'd say about 80% of our time, if not more, should be on being the plane. 10% of our time should be on being the pilot, and maybe 5 to 10% of our time should be on being the engineer.
How come? Like, I mean, just as a first thought, it seems like the pilot has an awful lot of leverage. Like, if the pilot makes a wrong decision about what the useful thing is to work on, the plane could be like the best plane in the world, and it would just be a complete waste, right?
It would, but I'm thinking in terms of time. Like, let's say for example, in a standard 8-hour workday, spending 5 to 10% of that time would be spending, let's say, an hour of that time, or no, a bit less than an hour, like 50 minutes of that time actually deciding what to do.
Okay.
And if you think about, like, do you really need 50 minutes every single day to decide what you're going to do for the day?
I guess so, yeah.
Probably don't. That's kind of why. But yeah, I agree. The pilot is a very, very high leverage thing. And equally, the engineer, whose job it is to kind of optimize the system and keep things oiled, keep things organized. The engineer is also not people who are too much of an engineer will spend years and years reading life hacker articles, but never actually executing on doing the role of the plane, which is actually your main job, to be the plane. So the engineer would be about, for example, figuring out ways to increase your typing speed, or figuring out a way of, following getting things done methodology to make your to-do list more organized, or setting up your calendar. It's mostly these one-off activities that actually lead to huge benefits in the long term for the efficiency of the system. It's not stuff you have to constantly pour time and energy into.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
Cool. So that is sort of the kind of mental model that I'm kind of running with in this class. Now, the thing that I am then thinking is that we split the class up into three areas. So principles, strategies, and tools. Principles being kind of the theoretical underpinnings of productivity, strategy being kind of actionable advice, life hacks, or whatever you want to call it, and tools being kind of a discussion about what specific apps people are using for different things. Does that sound reasonable to your head so far?
Yeah, like the three things are like three different levels of abstraction, where the principles are like the most abstract, and then the third thing was like the most concrete.
Ah, yes, levels of abstraction. Nice. I'm just writing this phrase down in Notion. We're not sponsoring this video.
Not Rome. What the hell, dude? It's it's April 2020. It's not February.
So I casually mentioned Rome in one of the videos, and loads of people in the comments thought I meant Rome the city. And so there were a few comments being like, everyone, I'm in lockdown. Ali, how do I find myself around Rome or something? And I think
are you sure that wasn't a joke? Oh, okay.
I don't think it was a joke. I don't think it was a joke. But no, unfortunately, Rome doesn't have very good team working thingies, and because it's April 2020, I now have a team to work with. On that note, I've actually recently hired a personal assistant, really? Which I'll talk to you about a little bit later.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so principles, strategy, and tools, different levels of abstraction. So in the principles, we've got the 3 myths of productivity, we've got the 3 laws of productivity, and we've got the 5 powers of productivity.
Oh, man.
This is looking good, isn't it?
Wait, I don't know. At first, my initial thought is that, like, this is a lot of stuff. There's like 3 plus 3 plus 5.
Yes, it is a lot of stuff. That's slightly the problem.
Okay.
Is that 11? Yeah. So that's partly a problem because initially this was all going to be one whole big Skillshare class, but then I realized, kind of looking at all the videos we've got planned, this is going to be like 60 videos, and it's going to be like many hours.
How long is a Skillshare video?
Oh, like between 5 and 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, right.
So it's going to be like quite a lot of hours of class. And then I sort of casually polled people on my Instagram story that would they prefer, one mammoth class or like a few smaller ones. And it seemed like most people would prefer a few smaller ones.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking, okay, cool, fine. So then you can split it up into, one class about the principles, one class about the strategy, one class about the tools. But that felt a little bit unsatisfying because the principles are so abstract and high level, it feels very wishy-washy to just have 13 videos just going over the theory.
Yeah.
And so then I was thinking, okay, well, I guess within the principles, we can also talk about kind of practical ways to apply them. And that's sort of the format that I've arrived on for the first productivity class, which is, this is a productivity equation. This is how we think about productivity. This is pilot, plane, and engineer analogy and how we think about it.
Yeah.
And here are the 6 kind of the 11 kind of principles, and here are some ways that you can apply them.
Yeah.
So I won't run through the strategy and the tools too much because then this podcast would be 8 hours long. But I'll just run through the principles, and I want to hear your thoughts on how you feel about these principles, whether they can be refined, whether there's any actionable points that you would think about adding to these.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with the 3 myths of productivity. So the first one is the time myth, which is the myth of, quote, I don't have time to do this.
Okay. So the myth is just that I don't have time is a myth. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have time is a myth. And the thesis for that is that it's never that we don't have time. It's just like, it's always that we are actively choosing not to make the time. So I might be tempted to think I don't have time to go to the gym, but that's not true. If I had the right motivation, if you were to offer me £1 million to go to the gym, I would freaking go to the gym. Like, that's not the time is not the problem. It's that it's not high enough on my priority list. And the sooner we recognize that actually our time is entirely within our control, with almost no exceptions, the sooner we can be like, okay, cool. Now I can decide, I can actively choose what to do with my time.
Yeah. Fine. If you truly have limited time, then it's not worth like fretting about like, oh, I have limited time. It's really, there's just no point thinking about that. Figure out how much time you have and try and make the most of that and try and improve, whatever. Like, it's just like, it's a pointless thing to think about. Yeah. I think there's a lot of these scenarios where someone will, there'll be some like piece of advice or something, or something that's proposed, and then someone will have a pushback to it. And I think in a lot of cases, just like the way of thinking that the pushback presents is like, yeah, you might be true. It might be true what you're saying. It might be true that like there is a ceiling to how good at piano I can personally get, or there is a ceiling to like how fast I can run. I'm sure that's true. It's just not worth thinking about almost ever, right? So I think like there are objections to like the growth mindset thing. There are like there's a class of objections, which is basically that like your framework is wrong in my special case. And I think a lot of times in that class of objections, it's like, yeah, you might be right. If you're right, well, good for you. You're right about this thing, but now you're on your own, and you're going to have to find a different productivity class on Skillshare. And like, yeah, it's just not worth thinking about it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I like what you said about the ceiling of progress when it comes to piano and stuff, because I suppose, because in a way, the whole I don't have time thing, whether or not it's actually true for you, like the point of all these frameworks and stuff isn't to arrive at fundamental truth. Yeah, it's to arrive at models that are potentially helpful. And for me, and I would contend for most people, the model of I am 100% in control of what I choose to do with my time is more helpful than a model of, well, actually, my circumstances mean that I actually don't have the time to do anything because, okay, fine. At that point, why are you watching a class about productivity if you actually have to look after your 3 disabled kids? Equally for like the piano or gym and stuff, I might think, I don't want to take steroids, therefore, I'm not going to get hench. Well, it's obviously not true. Like, there are so many other things I can do other than taking steroids to get hench.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be an Olympic weightlifter, therefore there's no point going to the gym. Like, it's just a completely pointless class of objections.
Yeah. I think there's a nice phrase that always comes to mind, which is that like when the student is ready, then the teacher appears or something. You know this phrase, right?
No, I haven't actually heard that one before.
Oh, well, yeah, it's like when the student is ready, the teacher appears or something. It's like whenever I hear someone like putting up that kind of objection, my overarching feeling is that the student is not ready.
Oh, interesting.
they are not ready to be like to be taught, if you will. I think teaching the word taught is problematic, obviously, but that's for another episode.
Oh, okay, cool. Right, that makes sense. So, yeah, coming back to the 3 myths of productivity, this I don't have time is a myth, and I really wanted to have like kind of practical, actionable kind of steps that people can take to incorporate this into their own lives. But apart from it just being a shift of mindset, I am struggling to think of actionable advice. One thing that some productivity gurus recommend is that if you actually think you don't have time, you literally track every minute of your day for a week and see where all your time is going. And then you'll realize that, actually, I had half an hour of sitting on Instagram every single day. That adds up to 4.5 hours in the week. Oh, wow, I actually do have time. Can you think of anything else?
Nope, that sounds good for myth 1.
Myth number 1, cool. Myth number 2 is, you guessed it, the motivation myth. And we've hashed this out in a previous episode about motivation, which apparently people found quite good. It's one of our most listened to ones, I think.
Is that the one with Callum?
No, it was one of the really early ones.
Oh,
Why do we
sorry.
struggle with motivation?
That's right. Yeah.
And just to kind of rehash the argument, actually, I've been rehashing it for ages. So why don't you rehash the argument of why motivation's a myth?
Gosh, I mean, it's not an argument so much as an assertion. It's just an assertion that motivation is a myth, and all you need is like discipline or something. Basically, like the model of like motivation first and action. In the model of like inspiration first and then action second. That like inspiration leads to action is just a bit flawed. And if you speak to anyone who is I use the word professional, but I don't mean necessarily that you have to be doing something as a day job. But like if any professional in any field will tell you that a lot of the time you do the action without the inspiration, and the action leads to the inspiration. It's this kind of virtuous cycle. But fundamentally, you need to get this thing out of your head of like, I need to feel like doing this thing before I do the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the diagram that I would kind of draw for this is imagine on one side of the diagram you have the thought that, okay, I should go to the gym. On the other side of the diagram you have the action of actually being at the gym and doing some work. But motivation is sort of this middle ground where I have to feel like going to the gym, otherwise I won't go to the gym. And it sort of operates on this erroneous assumption that you have to feel like doing the thing before you do the thing. But obviously, every single morning I don't feel like going to work. But it's not an option. Like, I'm a professional. I just go to work. It does not even cross my mind, which kind of actually simplifies the process massively, because when I was a medical student, every single day was a real struggle, because every single day you had to ask yourself, do I really want to go into work? Do I really want to go into lectures? Do I really want to go to the hospital? But when you start working full time and you have that decision taken away from you, it's just absolutely incredible. Equally, I remember when I was in first year and I was doing rowing all year. It would be, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning in the freezing cold to go out, cycle to the boathouse and do some rowing. And the whole like motivation thing is like, I really can't be bothered with this. But actually, if you didn't turn up, you would be letting 9 other people down, because they wouldn't be able to row without a full boat, and they would all have gotten up for no reason. And therefore, every single person got there every single time. Yeah. And it was incredible how just this fear of letting the group down is what gets a lot of people out of bed early in the morning in the cold. And if people can do that, then we can all kind of make promises to ourselves about the things we actually want to do. And just do them rather than feeling like we have to do them.
Yeah,
I
find the social contracts are really helpful for me as well. So like on days where I have like a 9 a.m. phone call or something, then like, even if like it's 8:55, I'm like, I'm really tired. I really don't want to take this call or something. I still get out of bed at like 8:59 and take the call at 9. Whereas if there's a day when I don't have any calls in the morning and I'm feeling, I'm tired, whatever, then I'm much more likely to laze around in bed until like 10 a.m. just for no reason. The social contract kind of keeps me honest, I think.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and actually, I was thinking about this because in the context of the whole coronavirus thing, I'm sure it crossed other people's minds as well, just like it crossed mine. That hey, if I don't want to go to work for a week, all I have to do is say that I've got a cough, and then I would literally have the best excuse in the world to just not go to work for a week. And I immediately dismissed that thought, mostly because of the social contract, mostly because of being like, oh, that would be letting the team down. And I just couldn't bear the thought of that, even though no one would know and no one would care. I think that's an important, like, kind of social obligation that we feel like we have.
No, I don't think I don't think the social contract is what's going on, because you've rightly said that no one would know or care. Like, you're not doing much work these days at the hospital, right? You're chilling. Like, if you don't show up, you're not letting the team down in any way, right? The team would understand. Like, it's not the social contract you're trying to upkeep. This is just a general sense of morality that, like, you want to do the right thing, all right?
Oh,
and look,
okay, fine.
It's not the social contract in this case. It's just it's a story that you tell yourself about being a good person. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. True. And then this would contradict my story that I tell myself.
Yeah. There's a good thingy book that I'm reading at the moment. Have you heard of Adam Smith?
I've heard of Adam Smith. It's a very common name. There was a guy in my ear called Adam Smith.
He's a sort of economist, philosopher type guy. I think a lot of people see him as like the father of capitalism in some sense, the father of economics, father of capitalism kind of thing. He was around like the 1700s. Anyway, his main kind of work that people know him for is a book called The Wealth of Nations, which is about like free market economics stuff. And I think he was like the first guy to think about this stuff. But he also wrote some stuff about kind of philosophy, morality, like, you know, life and stuff. Bit of overthinking on his part. And he has this idea of like morality where his model is basically that in each of our heads we have there's something that he calls the impartial observer, that like when we're going about our day, we feel like, you know, in our heads we feel like there is an impartial observer kind of watching us. And for example, if you lied about having a cough, you know, the social contract is still intact. Like, your coworkers aren't going to be any the wiser. However, there will be this impartial observer will have seen you lying about having a cough, and you will be thinking, oh man, the impartial observer knows what's up.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. I should read the Wealth of Nations.
No, it's not in the Wealth of Nations. It's in one of his other more philosophy ones called The Theory of Moral Sentiments.
Oh, interesting. The Theory of Moral Sentiment. Nice. That's good stuff. I will check it out. Anyway, yeah. So going back to our principle of motivation myth, in terms of practical things, the thesis that we've hashed out in a previous podcast episode about motivation is that, okay, fine, this motivation as a myth is the gold standard. In an ideal world, we would all have the thought and it would just immediately lead to the action. We would, quote, just do it. I hope we don't get demonetized for using that phrase. But in real life, there are probably... In real life, realistically speaking, we all do rely on motivation to some extent. So then the question is, okay, how can we hack the motivation thought processes to make us more likely to do the thing? And what I'm going to say in this class is that we only need motivation to do the things that are short-term pain for long-term gain. If we appreciate that, either we can act on the action or we can act on the outcome. If we act on the action, we can make it either more pleasurable or we can make the inaction more painful. So by making the act more pleasurable, you know, just making it more fun. You know, listening to music while you study, being in a nice coffee shop, ordering a cheeky latte. That
so this is basically like all of James Clear's Atomic Habits stuff about like that stuff.
Make it easy, make it something.
Yeah.
Or we can make the inaction more painful, like putting money on the line, saying, hey, Molly, if I don't go to the gym every single day this week, or if I don't do a home workout, every single day this week, then I will give you £1,000 and you can just keep it and do what you want with it, type thing. That makes the inaction more painful, which is why deadlines work so much that, you know, we all do essays the night before they're due because we know the inaction is more painful than the act itself.
Yeah. There's lots of these strategies. They're all, you know, people have written about them. We've talked about them. So let's move on to the next thing.
Fine. Next myth is the multitasking myth, and this is a little bit more sort of less abstract than time and motivation, but it's just basically that simple idea that multitasking is a myth. We should actually be focusing on one task at a time because there's all sorts of evidence about attention residue and task switching being not good for you because it means your attention gets diverted, blah, 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 blah.
Who thinks multitasking is a good idea? I'm not aware of anyone peddling this narrative. And like, what does multitasking even look like practically when you're trying to get things done?
Okay, so for example, having your inbox open on the side, having your notifications open. As soon as an email comes in, you check the email and do something with the notification, deal with it, and then task switch back to your main task.
Oh, so you don't mean like, typing on your keyboard with one hand on one thing, and then like, I don't know, practicing the guitar with the other hand.
So my thing is actually, I have the mouse in one hand, and then I practice coin rolls on my fingers with the other hand.
Oh, okay, nice.
That was how I learned the coin roll, because I was like, you know what? It's inefficient for me to have my left hand doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
why don't I just? Yeah.
I've had the same idea. I'm trying to get better at one-handed typing because, like, I mean, it's mostly out of laziness. Because sometimes I'll want to just like slouch with my head in on like one hand and just be doing stuff with the other hand. And like, I feel like I'm actually okay at one-handed typing. I'm sure I could get up to like, I don't know, I'm like 50 words per minute on one-handed typing. I'm sure I could get up to like 60, 70, which is like fast enough to do most things. And then, the other hand, you can just like do whatever you want. And we'll leave it there.
Right. We need to make sure this is not an R-rated podcast. Anyway, let's move on. So we've done the 3 myths of productivity. We're now on the 3 laws of productivity. So starting with Parkinson's law, which is pretty standard productivity advice, the idea that work expands to fill the time available for it. This was actually written by a British historian called Cyril Parkinson, believe it or not, in 1955. And he was looking at kind of the British civil service over the years and realized that everything in government takes absolutely ages, partly because they have absolutely ages to do simple projects, and therefore these kind of go wildly out of proportion complexity wise. In terms of practical advice about applying Parkinson's law, I was thinking simple things like setting artificial deadlines, or actively blocking out time that, okay, I'm only going to give myself half an hour to do this particular thing. I also really like, I think, Peter Thiel's idea that we all, like a lot of people, like to have this kind of 10-year plan. And Peter Thiel's idea is that think about, why can't you just achieve your 10-year plan in the next 6 months? Yeah. And like, sure, it might not be possible, but it's a useful exercise just anyway, because it really makes you think, okay, if I actually only had 6 months to do this thing that I've been planning to do for 10 years, what would I focus on? Can you think of anything else to apply Parkinson's law? No,
I think that's pretty good. I think this is something I'm particularly bad at, personally.
Yeah? How so?
Oh, we talked about it in previous episodes where, like, I know, for work stuff, I could do it on the weekend, I could do it late at night, I can do it whenever I want. And so I have a tendency to, work less productively during the day or whatever, because I know I can kind of make up for it deep down.
Yeah.
And that's kind of stupid.
Nice. Yeah, and I think for me, like, Parkinson's law is one of the main reasons why, I mean, apart from the fun thing, why I am, quote, productive. Because when you get home from work at like 8 p.m., and you've got to churn out a video by 10 p.m. that night, then there's just no option but to churn out the video.
Yeah.
And it just gets done. Whereas on days where I have a whole day to film a video, I don't do it until 10 p.m. in the nighttime.
Yeah.
Procrastination and all that. Cool. Next principle or law is the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule, which is the idea that 20% of the inputs lead to 80% of the outputs in most things in life. This was originally came up with like a few hundred years ago, I think, when looking at Italian landowners and realized that 20% of the population owned 80% of the land. Now that's very much out of proportion to that, in that like 1% of the population owns like 90% of the land. But this applies to a lot of things in life as well.
Yeah.
And then in terms of practical advice, I was thinking like the whole minimalism philosophy is very good for that. That we probably only wear 20% of our wardrobe like 80% of the time. So we can think about chucking out the remainder 80% that's taking up all this space.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can think of anything else that would apply to this productivity wise.
I'm a big fan of this. I feel like I'm always thinking about this, but I always think about it in stupid context. Like when I'm brushing my teeth, I think, this
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Really.
How many minutes do you actually need?
Yeah, precisely. Like, if I did it for 1 minute, that's like, is that like 90% of the benefit? And then like, sorry, go on.
So on the note of brushing teeth, recently I've realized that my teeth are a lot whiter than they've ever been before, and people have actually been commenting in like videos and stuff, being like, "Oh, your teeth look like a shining beacon" type situation. Even on things like these Zoom calls, like I'm smiling.
Yeah,
at you
they
now.
do look white, dude. Nice.
And do you know why they look white?
Are you using whitening toothpaste?
I've been using whitening toothpaste for years.
You're not drinking tea or something like that?
No, it's not. It's not even that. It's one simple high measure change. I got an electric toothbrush for like 20 quid, which pauses slightly every 30 seconds And at the end of 4 cycles of 30 seconds, i.e. at the end of 2 minutes, it does a zzz, 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 zzz. So you know that you've brushed your teeth for 2 minutes.
So it is actually that you have been brushing for 2 minutes that you think makes them whiter.
Exactly. Like in the past, like I would always guesstimate the 2 minutes. I'd be like, okay, that's probably right. But now I realize just how long 2 minutes actually is.
Wait, bro, you actually used to try and do 2 minutes?
Yeah, mate, obviously. You're supposed to brush your teeth for 2 minutes. I care about my teeth.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Clearly not that much of a productivity powerhouse if I've actually been brushing my teeth for 2 minutes. But no, because now I do 30 seconds in each quadrant of my mouth.
Right.
And it tells me, and it's taken all the friction out of brushing my teeth and thinking about the timing. And within like 2 weeks of owning this toothbrush, people started commenting on how white my teeth were looking.
That's mental. All right. Yeah, I've been holding off on the electric toothbrush thing for a while. Yeah, I feel like it ruins the fun.
Yeah. For brushing your teeth.
Yeah. The tactile kind of nature of like, and then I try and have a little game where I try and see like how fast can I like move it side to side to like make it brush, you know, like all this kind of stuff.
I guarantee an electric toothbrush is faster than your hand motion.
All right, I'll get an electric toothbrush.
So on that note, I actually looked up the Wirecutter article about this. So for those who are unfamiliar, Wirecutter is a good website that does reviews on everything. So if you just type in best electric toothbrush Wirecutter, they will review like 500 of them and tell you what the best one is. And basically what they were saying, like the first question is, do I really need an electric toothbrush? And what they were saying is that the only benefit of an electric toothbrush, like all these fancy features don't mean anything, but the main benefit is the timing, the fact that it times 2 minutes for you. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. And then my teeth became white from like 2 weeks after that. So it's sick.
Damn. All right. I've added that to my room to do tasks. Yeah, I was actually on Wirecutter earlier to look for a TV. So I will get back on it to look for a toothbrush. Yeah, we're getting a new TV for the house.
Wait, for the house or for your flat?
The house.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you convince me of that?
Mate, it's been a long and strange trip. Yeah.
What's been happening? Like, what was because it's been very resistant. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's sort of like back in the day when you knew that you want to get a laptop 2 years from now, so you start sowing the seeds.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, so the computer's getting a bit slow. And then 2 months later being like, oh yeah, so the computer crashed today. And then you build up the narrative over time.
Yeah, I think fundamentally Mimi just doesn't like wasting things, and she's like happy. She's like fine with the TV, so she sees it as like wasteful. But my argument was like, look, there's two of us that live in the house. You care about some things and you don't care about others. I care about some things and I don't care about others. The TV is something that I care about and you don't care about. So like you lose nothing and I gain stuff if we get a new TV. And like you can't really argue with that, right? Like it's a very reasonable thing.
Well, yes, but since when was that? Never mind, let's leave it at that. Cool. So that was the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So you applied to brushing your teeth. Can you think of any other ways to apply it to productivity itself, other than just kind of keeping it in the back of our minds? I mean, like I sort of apply it a lot to preparing for exams, because often it is the 20% of core content that, if you really understand, actually contributes to 80% of the marks. And it's so easy when we're trying to revise for exams to really to go into the minutiae because we don't want to miss anything. But actually, if you just focus on the big picture, you can get most of the way there. And most of the way there is all you really need.
Yeah, I think that's good for exams. To be honest, the way I kind of think about this is less as like, what is the 20% of stuff that I should focus on, and I rather use it as like a continual process. So like if you're writing a blog post, for example, like you should, I tend not to do it like sequentially of like, let's nail the intro, then let's nail the next bit, and then the next bit. You start zoomed out and then you slowly kind of zoom in. So you do like a first draft, which is like the 20% of the work, which is like takes 20% of the time and is like 80% of the work of getting like a basic structure. And then you kind of do another 80-20 on that and another 80-20 on that, and kind of keep progressively adding more stuff rather than approaching every task sequentially. So for example, if you were preparing for exams, a bad way to do it is probably like, okay, there's like 10 different topics. Going to spend week 1 doing topic 1, week 2 doing topic 2, and so on. You want to get the basics in all the topics, and then the next level of detail in all the topics, and then the next level of detail. So like it's like a continual process of like 80-20ing whatever work left.
Yeah, and that is how I actually think about exams. I sort of think of it as sort of a blank canvas, and you want to start off by filling that canvas as much as possible.
Yeah.
The broad brushstrokes, and then you want to do another pass where you fill a little bit more detail, and then another pass where you fill a little bit more detail, rather than focusing on that, first 1/16 of the of the canvas and kind of perfecting that first.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in my exam days, the thing I always used to think was like, okay, if the exams were tomorrow, what would I be most scared about?
Oh, mate, this is literally my exact thought process. I've been saying this in videos since like
Really?
2017.
Oh, nice.
Except the way I phrase it is, if the exam were tomorrow, what would I most which topic would I be most pissed off about?
Okay.
Or something like that, just to
Yeah.
kind of really drive it home and be like, okay, cool, I need to learn how to examine the testicles. Which I said in one of my study with me videos in 2018.
That wasn't for
But yeah,
exam.
cool. No, that was for real life. Anyway, let's move on. So, third law. So far we've done 3 myths and 2 laws, and then we'll just kind of blitz through the rest because we've been recording for how long? Well, it's only 44 minutes. That's fine. People can live through this. The third law of productivity is Newton's first law of motion. So, Taimo, can you remember what Newton's first law of motion is?
Is this the one about like it's not F equals ma? It's not that one.
That's Newton's second law, famously.
Yes. The first law is that the sort of the casual phrasing is like that every action has the equal opposite reaction or something.
Very good, but that's the third law.
Oh, damn. What's the first law?
The first law is that an object remains at rest or in constant motion unless acted on by an external imbalanced force.
I mean, so I thought about that, but that is F equals ma.
F equals ma is a corollary of that. But no, the first law is without resultant forces, an object is either at rest or it's moving at a constant velocity.
Okay, fine. I thought that was
F equals ma.
F equals ma, where a.
No, F equals ma is a sort of a special case of that takes the mass into account.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I guess
anyway, so that's Newton's first law. An object is at rest or at constant motion unless acted on by an external imbalanced force. And so applying this to productivity, it's basically that it's so hard to get started at doing anything because it requires an external force to get you started. But once you're in motion, it actually doesn't require any additional force to keep you in motion. And so if we can sort of think about that in terms of how we actually get stuff done, like the thing that people struggle with most often is the plane taking off, like actually sitting down and getting started and doing the work, which is why there's all sorts of these productivity hacks that, convince yourself you're only going to do it for 30 seconds. Or instead of saying, I'm going to read 10 pages of this book, to tell yourself, I'm going to read 2 words of this book, because you'll realize that once you get started, it's actually a lot easier to keep going. And getting started was the hard part. Yeah. And I think that's a really important principle to keep in mind, because whenever we are struggling with anything, if we can just get started, then it's all good. And another thing that just kind of came to mind is keystone habits, which is sort of relevant to this, but never mind. Anyway, so we've done the 3 principles. We've done the 3 myths, the 3 laws. Let's just quickly go through the 5 powers of productivity. And I'm open to cutting these down. It would be nice for these to become 3 powers, because then it's like a 3 list of 3.
Yeah.
So the first one is the power of habits, basically about how habits are like the best thing ever. The second one was the power of consistency. But I feel like both are basically sort of the same thing.
Yeah, that feels like there's a lot of overlap there.
So potentially those could be paired together. The third is the power of the flow state. Like, there's all this stuff. For example, psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi popularized the term flow state in the 1990s. It's defined as an optimal state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. People are labeling it as being in the zone, whatever, but basically being hyper-focused at the task at hand. I wonder if that can go into the myth of multitasking, actually. Maybe it can. And then perfect. Okay. So we've got consistency, which is part of habits. We've got, okay. So now we have 3 powers of productivity. This is perfect. This is good stuff. So the first power is the power of consistency / the power of habits, which is fairly obvious stuff. The second one is the power of productive downtime. So for example, for you, it's watching David Dobrik vlogs while sitting on the toilet. For me, it's replying to YouTube comments while sitting on the toilet. Or
you watch
example,
David Dobrik vlogs too?
Yeah.
Don't pretend like I'm the one who does this.
Look, I have to sell myself as being a productivity powerhouse, and that does, I suppose, because I'm a YouTuber. Watching David Dobrik vlogs actually makes sense. Actually, on that note, I've signed up to this like 8-week YouTube coaching program type thing.
What is that?
Where every week they give you assignments and you have like a live Zoom call with people from all around the world, kind of when like the coaches and stuff talking about how to grow your YouTube channel. And the assignment for this week is to find 5 YouTube channels that you would never normally watch and analyze what it is about them that makes them work.
Nice.
So I found this channel called Madeline Petch or something like that. Have you heard of her?
Nope.
She is one of the actresses in Riverdale. And so she's got like 5 million plus subscribers on YouTube, and like a lot of the Riverdale cast has their own YouTube channels, and they've got sort of like in the millions of subscribers, obviously, because it's a big TV show. And it was just weird things like, like makeup tutorials and like cook with me and boyfriend tag and stuff that I would never normally watch. And I was it was even an ASMR video in there that was surprisingly addictive. So I've been watching all of this stuff for science is what I'm saying.
Dude, I told you this literally like 3 months ago. I said, hey, Ollie, all you do is watch productivity stuff. You should be consuming YouTube content outside of your normal sphere so you can pick up some tricks and stuff. And you're like, oh yeah, whatever, man.
Look, I started watching David Dobrik because of that recommendation.
Okay, fine.
And I have wasted hours and hours of my life so far.
Nice.
Anyway, productive downtime as well. So that's something that I quite like. It's like at work and in the hospital. It's not that there is work to do 24/7. It's like there are lots and lots of moments of downtime where you're waiting for a patient to arrive, or you happen to have no patients on the ward, or you've done your job for the afternoon and you've got an hour to kill before going home. Looking around at work, most people would kind of be on their phone, kind of scrolling Instagram from the kind of polling that I've casually done. But I always take my iPad or my laptop with me to work for that very reason, because I can't really be productive on my phone. But if I bash out the laptop or bash out the iPad, it means I can do stuff, which means my time, the amount of stuff that I squeeze out with my time is massively increased, because there's all these random moments of downtime throughout the day.
Yeah.
Do you do any productive downtimey things, or are you big on, oh man, I just want to relax?
What do you mean by productive downtime?
I suppose it's different for you because you kind of do your own thing. Whereas for me, I have to clock in at work at 8 a.m. and clock out at 5 p.m.
Right.
And so when there's nothing to do at work, it's not that I can just, I don't know. I mean, I should do something with that time, given that I'm at work during that time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I don't really do I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this really applies to me.
Okay, fine. And finally, the power of productive procrastination. So I think this is something that you would resonate with. So it's the idea that if you can make your procrastination actually productive in some sort of way, that's actually useful. So for example, for me, back in the day, procrastination used to be browsing web design inspiration, or, you know what, I should be doing this thing, but actually I'm going to go down this rabbit hole about reading about this thing, which actually turns out to be quite useful. Or I should be doing this thing, but I'm just going to play some piano and kind of just do some interval training with this musical interval training app that I started using,
right?
Which is sort of like productive procrastination. I'm procrastinating from doing what I actually should be doing, but that procrastination is inherently productive.
Yeah,
it's useful.
I think it's great. This is how I got into playing the piano in fourth year. I didn't want to like sit at my desk and do work, and so I just went on the piano instead. I mean, I was lucky that I borrowed a piano from my friend who lived in the room next to me. But yeah, I think it really works.
Cool. So, do you have any kind of actionable tips that you can take that people can take from the theory of productive procrastination?
Yeah, I think it comes to like environment design.
Ooh, interesting. Tell me more.
Like, I don't know, if it's like, for example, the piano thing in fourth year, I didn't have like a particularly big room. I had my like my computer and stuff set up on my desk, and then I had the piano like on the windowsill sort of thing, and the piano was just basically always there. There was no friction for me to like get up and go and start playing it, and so I just kept doing it. Whereas if it took like 2 steps of like, oh, I have to like go and plug the thing in because it's not always plugged in, then like I just wouldn't have done it as often.
Yeah, that's very true. This is another thing that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, that if you struggle with playing the PlayStation too much, then literally every time you play it, just like unplug it and put it in the cupboard. Because just those 2 steps of having to take it out of the cupboard and plugging it in again massively increases the friction to playing the PlayStation, which means you're less likely to do it.
Yeah. One thing I've started doing is that like, if my phone is at my desk, I'll often get distracted. And so like, whenever I notice myself getting distracted, I'll like chuck my phone across the room onto like the bed. Yeah. And then like, I can't just access it without getting up. So then I just don't go on it.
Oh yeah, mate. I had this. I had that this morning. Like I got up at like 9 a.m. and because I don't have my phone in bed with me, it was across the room, and I was thinking that okay, I kind of want to go on my phone right now, but it's across the room, so I can't be bothered to go on my phone. You know what? I might as well just lie in bed, getting bored for 5 minutes, and then get up and get out of bed.
Yeah.
Whereas if I had my phone on the bedside table, I would have spent 3 hours just lying in bed on my phone because that would have been my vegetative state at that point. So yeah, productive procrastination, environment design. Yeah, I think that's some pretty practical stuff. And then the final thing that I was going to talk about is just kind of the fun factor, and basically talking about how fun kind of bleeds into all elements of productivity. Because if you can have fun doing the thing, then actually you're winning at life.
Yeah, 100%.
Does that sound all right? Have you got any practical tips on how to enjoy the things that you do more? Like when you were studying for your exams and stuff, or kind of doing work, presumably you don't enjoy 100% of it. Like how do you talk yourself into enjoying it?
I think to a large extent, I try and think that, like, if I'm not enjoying this, then I'm the mug here, you know? Like, I'm choosing to, like, you know, for like university or whatever. I chose to go to university. I chose to spend 4 years, like, studying this random stuff. Like, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm just like, yeah, I'm a total knob. Like, I've just screwed myself. And you know, there was a particularly interesting moment in I think it was like third year or fourth year or something, and I was thinking something along the lines of, man, why is life so like difficult or something? I wish I could just be living in like the Naruto world where like all I care about is this one thing of like, you know, being a ninja, becoming Hokage or something. And I'm really jealous of like Naruto that he can just like focus on this one thing. And then I realized, wait, that is literally the setup I have right now. I was meant to come to this university for 4 years to literally focus on one thing and just like do some maths. Like that's all. Yeah, that is exactly what my life is right now. And so yeah, it's always I thought that was a funny little thought that I had.
Oh, okay. And so from that point on, did you start?
No, no, obviously not. It didn't have any long-term benefit. It was just a funny thought.
Like I'm trying to tease out actionable strategies about how people can enjoy stuff a bit more.
You're looking at the wrong places, mate.
Like I thought this was going to be a profound point. I might include this in the Skillshare class and just cut out the final bit where you're admitting that you're a waste man.
Yeah, dude, I haven't got any secrets.
Okay, no, but okay, I think this is a good phrase though. If I'm not enjoying this, I'm the mug here. If I'm not enjoying this, I'm a total knob. I'm just screaming. That's very good. I might put that on a poster.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, good stuff. Anything else you want to add about productivity? This is going to be basically the structure of my Skillshare class number 1.
That sounds pretty solid.
Nice. Cool. I think we're done there then. So what's your insight of the week? Let me check out my notes on Rome.
Oh, here's my insight of the week. Right. Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, I watched a film called Knives Out. I think I told you about this. Very good film.
You did. You said it was
like
very good, yeah.
It's like a murder mystery type thing, okay? And the feeling I always have when I'm watching something like a murder mystery, or like any kind of mystery film, is that there's always a moment like during the film when I'm kind of explicitly aware of the fact that, wait, someone literally like sat in a room, worked backwards from this ending to like add all these twists and stuff that seem really clever and whatnot. And like someone just sat there and made it all up, and now I'm laughing it all up. Yeah, you know? and like at some point during any kind of mystery film, I think they just worked back from the ending. Like, oh, there's obviously some skill going on, but like, you know, I'm just like someone made a bunch of stuff up, and here I am, like spending 2 hours watching it. And I think that's funny because like that's obviously true of any film or TV show, right? Like someone sat there and made some stuff up, and now I'm watching it.
It's also very true of books, which last like hundreds of hours rather than just the 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I always feel like a bit of a mug during like mystery stuff. But then it, like the obvious like next thing is like, well, that's just all kinds of art that you consume, right?
Exactly.
So
we
yeah,
sat there and made it up, just like we've just basically sat here and made up all this productivity stuff, and I'm going to turn it out into a Skillshare class hopefully over the next few weeks.
Yeah. That's my insight. Deeply insightful.
Nice. That's a good insight. My insight is I've started trying to use Twitter a bit more. So I feel I kind of want some advice on this front because I always feel a bit I still get massive imposter syndrome on Twitter. In that,
what does that mean?
In that, so for example, on Instagram, I can shit post on Instagram, and I don't actually care. Like, I can just kind of post what I'm doing my day or put a poll or something because I know people are going to respond to it and people are going to like it. Whereas on Twitter, I feel like I've now got like 13,000 followers or something after Jack Edwards, another study tuber, like tweeted about me like yesterday, which like, got a huge influx of followers. I've got like 13,000 followers on Twitter now, but I feel like the people I'm talking to are, for example, like the tech bros. And therefore, I feel like there's a higher barrier of stuff for what I'm allowed to put on Twitter, rather than, if you get what I mean. So I feel like sort of imposter syndrome. So like yesterday, I would go like, hey guys, I'm doing a 600k subscribers Q&A. By the way, I hit 600,000 subscribers yesterday. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Congrats. That's a big step.
Yes. So I posted on Twitter, and then I sort of said, hey, use the hashtag #AskUli or something. And I had to sort of suffix it with like sort of something like, oh, I think that's how this Twitter thing works. Just because I felt really...
I saw the tweet. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know. I just feel a bit of an imposter on Twitter. I don't know how to get over this.
Yeah, I think you just have like the wrong kind of. Like, it depends on what Twitter communities you're in, but actually these days, in most of the Twitter communities that I'm in, there's a big backlash against insight tweets. Like, some people treat Twitter as some like pissing contest of like, oh, I want like the most pithy, like little insightful nuggets that I can tweet to get loads of likes. Yeah. And fine, some people do that. You get lots of likes, you get lots of followers. Good for you. The communities that I'm in, it's more about just like keeping it real, connecting with your fellow man, all that kind of stuff. And so like shit posting is very highly appreciated. And like, I mean, I guess it depends on what the shit post is, but like, yeah, it's it will be really lame for me to like try and tweet some like really well phrased like insight thing. Like I would get, I'd get unfollowed for that, and I should get unfollowed for that. That would just be really lame. So it's just, don't try and play that game. Basically, it's a stupid game to play.
So how should I be thinking about what goes on Twitter versus what does? So, for example, this morning I had a very nice poo. It was like a 6 on the Bristol stool chart. It came out very nicely. Is that the sort of thing that I'd be like, just had a great poo, lads, on Twitter?
That's probably the kind of thing that I wouldn't, because look, ultimately, people are going to be reading this thing, so it should be meaningful or valuable in that context. In the poo context, like in the context of your 6 on the Bristol stool chart, like there's no, it's not like funny, for example. So like, people aren't going to get enjoyment from it. It doesn't like share a meaningful part of yourself with the world, unless you really think that is a very meaningful part of yourself. Just like on any kind of reasonable heuristic for like, is this worth tweeting about? It's not really worth tweeting about. The stuff that
what are those reasonable heuristics?
Yeah, I'm just looking through my past tweets. Okay, so I think jokes always like, if you think it's funny, tweet it. Like it's just yeah. So anything that's funny. I did a good one recently. A few people have been posting about like pictures of their cities without any people in them, like with no cars, no pollution and stuff. And I did a tweet entitled "Amazing View of London Without Cars or Pollution," and then the picture is a picture of the Hidden Leaf Village from Naruto. So good. So like, yeah, I think funny stuff, you always want to do it. Like there is some like I guess like insightful is the wrong word. But for example, I tweeted last week, so I was writing this blog post, just reached the trough of disillusionment where everything I'm writing in this article seems obvious and not worth saying. We journey on. And like, I think that was worth tweeting because like, it can.
I think that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, I think it's like relatable. Like I think it's like it was like a meaningful part of my experience at that point in time. So like, I don't know, man.
Mate, I'm looking for some actionable advice here, and you're not delivering right now.
Yeah, like, look, just keep it real, man.
Keep it real, but don't talk about your poo.
Yeah, like the poo thing's just not that interesting. I mean, is that really that interesting to you that you'd want to tweet about it?
No, it's not really. I mean, no, it's not. It was just a throwaway example.
Yeah, so
okay, fine. I'll try keeping it real. And good insight. All right. Anything else? I think we're done. I think we're done. Let's just we haven't read a review for a couple of weeks, so let's read a review. Yes. Let me open up chartable.com. All right. This looks like a nice one from none other than Kanye West in the United States of America. It's entitled "Thank You, Tabor and Ali. This is the best podcast I've ever listened to. Genuinely, I've tried to listen to all sorts of other podcasts, but I haven't been able to enjoy any of them the way I enjoy this, even Tim Ferriss's. Sorry, Ali. The blend of thoughts-provoking insights and interesting information, but all within the context of a charming and humorous conversation between two brothers who aren't too professional about it and just having a good discussion is incredible. Seriously, bravo. I love the podcast. The chemistry you two have is undeniably great, and we love your dynamic/sense of humor. I've learned a lot, and with this conversation-based method, it's a lot better as opposed to the spoon-feeding of information and straight-lined, agenda-driven style of similar podcasts. We love the warm, family-ish atmosphere. I don't have a shortage of good things to say about the podcast. As you may be able to tell, keep it up, lads. From Khalid, a second-year uni student in the US, whose Apple review name is Kanye West. That's nice. Yeah, I like that it doesn't feel spoon-feedy. One thing I'm interested to know is
we get comments and reviews saying that like I've learned a lot from this, or like this has impacted my life in some way. Outside of sheer entertainment, which I think is meaningful, but like people are claiming that the podcast has had some more than just entertainment effect on their lives. I'm highly skeptical of this. So if anyone has actually, I'm skeptical of this for the same reason that I'm just skeptical of like the whole productivity content machine, which is that it feels like you're learning something, and it feels like this is helping you. But certainly in my experience, it often doesn't. So I would be very interested to hear about like tangible way. I doubt many people have had this experience, but if you have had some like tangible changes to your life in terms of how you think about stuff or how you do stuff, that would be interesting to hear about, because at the moment I don't buy it.
So I think you're over-indexing on the tangible front. Like a lot of the stuff we talk about isn't really tangible. Like we have the quote action points at the end of the episode where we were like, hey, we should decide to put more effort into our friendships and therefore set up a Slack team for our friends, which just ended up never happening. Okay, that would be a tangible thing, for example.
I don't mean that tangible. Okay, but by tangible, I just mean like, like I think tangible, something that would qualify as tangible is like, when I hang out with my friends, I think about this, whereas previously I used to think about something else, or like the way when I like meet new people, I like approach it in this way, whereas previously I approached it. That's tangible enough for me. I'm not saying like show me your calendar and like I'm not saying anything like that.
Okay, some sort of change in mental model, kind of before and after.
Yeah, sure,
sounds reasonable.
That would be interesting to hear about.
Send in your tweets at @overthinking or emails at hi@notoverthinking.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening.
If you like this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on the Apple Podcasts website if you're not using an iPhone. There's a link in the show notes.
If you've got any thoughts on this episode or any ideas for new podcast topics, we'd love to get an audio message from you with your conundrum, question, or just anything that we could discuss.
Yeah, if you're up for having your voice played on the podcast and your question being the springboard for our discussion, email us an audio file MP3 or voice note to hi@notoverthinking.com.
If you've got thoughts but you'd rather not have your voice played publicly, that's fine as well. Tweet or DM us at @noverthinking on Twitter, please.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.